to the U.S. detention center at Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. And an alarming hunger strike underway right now. More than half of the inmates housed there are participating in this hunger strike, and some of them even have to be administered liquid nutrition through a tube in place of food. Whether or not the facility should be shut down has been a hot-button issue here in Washington for many years. The president vowed early on in his presidency to do that. So far, that has not happened. Today, he strongly renewed that push.
Well, it is not a surprise to me that we've got problems in Guantanamo, which is why when I was campaigning in 2007 and 2008, and when I was elected in 2008, I said we need to close Guantanamo. I continue to believe that we've got to close Guantanamo. I think, well, I think it is critical for us to understand that Guantanamo is not necessary to keep America safe. It is expensive. It is inefficient. It hurts us in terms of our international standing. It lessens cooperation with our allies on counterterrorism efforts. It is a recruitment tool for extremists. It needs to be closed.
And joining us now, the New York Times Washington correspondent Charlie Savage. He's been reporting from Guantanamo. Pretty powerful words from the president today. Charlie, what's your response when you heard what the president had to say?
Well, he certainly was recommitting to his vow from 2009 to close the prison somehow. I was a little confused about what he meant by that, however, because his specific plan for doing so was to take the detainees who are there and bring them to a maximum security prison inside the United States, where many of them would continue to be held without trial as wartime prisoners. And so while that might solve some of the problems he listed with Guantanamo, like its expense and its sort of public relations symbolism, it's not clear to me how that would address the problems now underway with the hunger strike among the dozens of detainees, really over 100 at this point, who are refusing to eat because they've been held for over a decade without a trial, and they've lost hope that they'll ever go home alive.
About those forced feedings, getting some nutrition into these hunger strikers, the American Medical Association has been calling out the Department of Defense ethically. How difficult is this hunger strike in dealing with it?
Well, that's right. It's the Defense Department's position that detainees are allowed to hunger strike, but they're not allowed to kill themselves. And so if they grow dangerously malnourished or don't drink, they have to be force-fed. And if they refuse to drink this Ensure nutritional supplement, they are strapped to a chair and a tube is run into their nose and down their throats into their stomach. And this nutritional supplement is poured into their stomach to keep them alive. We now know that over 20 of them are receiving, or at least approved to receive, that procedure if they refuse to eat behind closed doors. And President Obama today was asked about, are you going to keep force-feeding detainees, and he said he doesn't want these people to die. You're right that medical ethicists say that that's a violation of professional ethics for a doctor to intervene with a prisoner in any kind of incarcerated setting who is of sound mind and is choosing not to eat or drink. This was a similar fight that the AMA had with the Bush administration during earlier rounds of hunger strikes in the last administration. Now it's flaring under Mr. Obama.
You spoke to a lot of folks at Guantanamo Bay and other experts. What could end these hunger strikes? What would satisfy the prisoners?
Well, we were told when we were down there, several reporters recently, we spoke at length with a Muslim cultural advisor to the military who's worked there since 2005. And his opinion from talking with the detainees and observing them over the years is that the source of the frustration that's driving all of this is that transfers out of the prison have dried up. There's not been a low-level prisoner transferred since 2011 who wasn't ordered released by a judge or some other judicial process. 86 of them have been long since designated for potential transfer if security conditions can be met, but they remain stuck there more than 3 years later. And President Obama, until recently, had not talked about closing Guantanamo anymore, and had reassigned the ambassador whose job it was to negotiate transfers without replacing him. And his sense was that what they want to see to calm down and start complying with the rules again is someone leaving. which would give them hope that if they obey the rules and just are quiet, someday they too might be allowed to go home. Now, obviously, we're not talking about high-level terrorists like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who are facing trial before a military commission for specific terrorist attacks. We're talking about the bulk of the detainees who have been deemed to be sort of part of al-Qaeda, but on a foot soldier level, and are not linked to anything in particular.
Charlie Savage, who writes for the New York Times, just back from Gitmo. Thanks, Charlie, very much.
Thank you for having me.